If you look at Surah 2, Ayah 223, I'm going to read that because it's a very important verse to read. And this is a verse that modernist scholars object to.
No scholar or student, secular or religious, disagrees with this verse, except bigot anti-Islamist. This verse is very well accepted as a natural procedure by all, without any complaint.
In Surah 2, Ayah 223, it says this: "Your wives are a tilth for you, so go to your tilth, when or how you will, and send for your own selves beforehand, and fear Allah, and know that you are to meet Him," etc. Now, what's interesting about that verse, it says, your wives are a tilth. A tilth is a field, that's the idea. So go to your tilth, your field, when or how you will.
Professor Keith Moore is one of the world's prominent scientists in the fields of anatomy and embryology, and is the author of the book entitled The Developing Human, and was chosen by the Special Committee in the United States as the best book authorized by one person. He received the most distinguished award presented in the field of anatomy in Canada, the JCB Grant Award. Let's now listen to what Professor Keith Moore has to say.
This passage from the Quran states, "Your wives are a tilth or a hearth unto you, so approach your tilth when or how you will." Tilth or hearth refers to cultivation of the soil. So it's clear that an understanding of the lining of the uterus, or what we call the endometrium, was very much like soil, that when the blastocyst implants, it gets its nourishment from the mother's blood, just as a plant, roots of a plant get its nourishment from the soil. The last step of the nutfa stage begins with implantation of the blastocyst and is called the hearth phase. The Quran considers this process analogous to the cultivation of the soil and the lining of the uterus like soil in which the seed develops. Indeed, the blastocyst embeds and roots itself into the endometrium with cells which will eventually form the placenta, just as the seed embeds itself in the soil. This shows the uterus at the top, and the red area, which is blown up in the bottom, is the lining of the endometrium, or the uterus, into which the blastocyst, or early human embryo, implants, and it gets its nourishment from those blood vessels and mother's blood, which carries the oxygen and nutrient substances to it. And the comparison then to a seed developing in the soil is a very accurate one.
And it's disturbing because it seems that this woman, the wife, belongs to the husband. It's not like the Bible where it has a verse about sexuality where husbands, you belong to your wife, and wife, you belong to your husband.
She knows very well, according to every versions of Bible, wives are slaves of their husbands. Husbands are equal to God for women, as husbands are Lord in every way. Ephesians chapter 5, 22-24. Wives, be subject to your own husbands, as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. 1 Peter chapter 3, 1. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives. Colossians chapter 3, 18. Wives, be subject to your husbands, as is fitting in the Lord. Women have to be slaves of their husbands for fitting with the God of New Testament. In Islam, women do not have to be slaves of their husbands for fitting with Allah. 1 Timothy chapter 2, 11-12. Let the woman learn in silence with all subjection, but I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. Therefore, wives are slaves of their husbands according to every versions of Bible, especially New Testament. The only roles of women in the Bible are prostitute, slave, or wife, which is equal to slave according to every versions of Bible, especially New Testament. Whereas in Islam, women are not silent slaves. They are great businesswomen, economists, politicians, great scholar, great teacher, activist, doctor, brave warrior, etc. Have you no shame defending Bible as a woman? You and your kind are so shameless that you won't even hesitate to accept a rape victim's eternal marriage to her rapist, if raped before marriage according to Bible. According to all major Christian denominations, Jesus is the God of Old Testament, and all laws of Old Testament are given by Jesus. And according to all major Christian denominations, anyone who rejects that Jesus is the God and lawgiver of Old Testament are heretics following Marcionism. Deuteronomy chapter 22, 28-29. If a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married, and rapes her, and they are discovered, he shall pay the girl's father 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the girl, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. Hope you don't get raped before or after your marriage, because according to Bible, if you get raped before marriage, you will be eternally married to your rapist, and if you get raped after marriage, you will be stoned to death. In both cases, whether raped before or after marriage, the rape victim is always penalized, whereas rapist is only penalized for raping married women, but rewarded for raping unmarried women. Deuteronomy chapter 22, 24. You shall take both of them to the gate of that town, and stone them to death. The girl, because she was in a town and did not scream for help, and the man, because he violated another man's wife. You must purge the evil from among you. Whereas according to Islam, the rape victims are always innocent, under any circumstance, whether raped before or after marriage, and the rapist is penalized with death penalty. Does your father have evidence for your virginity? Deuteronomy chapter 22, 13-21. If a man takes a wife, and after lying with her, dislikes her, and slanders her, and gives her a bad name, saying, I married this woman, but when I approached her, I did not find proof of her virginity, then the girl's father and mother shall bring proof that she was a virgin to the town elders at the gate. Then her parents shall display the cloth before the elders of the town, and the elders shall take the man and punish him. They shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the girl's father. If, however, the charge is true, and no proof of the girl's virginity can be found, she shall be brought to the door of her father's house, and there the men of her town shall stone her to death. You must purge the evil from among you. According to every versions of Bible, fathers can sell their daughters as slaves. Exodus chapter 21, 7. If a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves do. Whereas Muhammad, the messenger of the God, said, if a man brought up daughters or sisters and have patience over them, taught them good manners, treated them with kindness, feeds them and clothes them well according to his means, until the daughters and sisters became self-sufficient, those daughters and sisters will become means of rescue for that man from hellfire, and Allah will make paradise obligatory for that man. And Quran, the word of the God, absolutely condemn infanticide, male or female. Whereas the triune God of Bible, especially the second person of the Godhead, Jesus, the God and the lawgiver of Old Testament, caused the people to commit infanticides and cannibalisms of their own children. Hope you never make a mistake unintentionally, or because you did not understand, or foolishly do something which may be wrong, because according to every versions of Bible, beating is mandate for those who are lean on judgment, weak in understanding, or simply foolish. Proverbs chapter 10, 13. In the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. There is no such physical punishment in Islam for doing something foolishly or by mistake. According to Islam, if a wife intentionally does something immoral, husband first has to explain and admonish her. But if she still continues with that wrongdoing, then separate their bed as a punishment. But instead of reforming, if she still continues with immorality, then finally, as a last resort, the husband is allowed to beat her as a deterrence, without causing bruises. If all these methods fail, Then the family members of both husband and wife are summoned for truce and arbitrament. If arbitration fails to truce, then the marriage is divorced. According to Islam, it takes 3 months for a man to divorce his wife, except in the case of adultery, which is instantaneous. But a wife can divorce her husband instantaneously, anytime, and she does not have to live with a husband she dislikes for a moment. Whereas according to Jesus, divorce is absolutely forbidden. Whether the husband is abusive, drunkard, or sterile, it does not matter. The woman is stuck with the man she dislikes forever. And marrying divorced women is equal to adultery. Whereas according to Islam, there is no sin or shame in marrying divorced women. Hope your husband never suspects you of being unfaithful, so that you won't have to go through the trial by ordeal. If men are ever jealous, doubtful, or suspicious of their wives' faithfulness, they can authenticate their wives' faithfulness to them by the ordeal of the bitter water. In the ordeal of the bitter water, the husbands take their wives to the priest, with offering of 1/10 of an ephah of barley flour on wife's behalf. Must not pour oil or essence on it, as it is a grain offering for jealousy and a reminder to draw attention to guilt. The priest brings the woman and has them stand before the Lord and take some holy water in a clay jar and put some dust from the tabernacle floor into the water. Then the priest loosens the woman's hair and places in the woman's hand the jealousy reminder offering of the grain, while the priest himself holds the bitter water which will cause the curse. Then the priest puts the woman under oath, and if the women have been faithful to their husbands, no curse or harm will fall on them. But if the women have been unfaithful to their husbands, the curse of the Lord and people will fall on the woman, and the woman will be denounced. Their thighs will waste away, and their abdomens will swell. And after all these humiliations, the accused woman must say Amen to this humiliating, divine examination. Then the priest will write the curses on a scroll and then wash them off into the bitter water and make the accused woman drink it to bring the curse and cause bitter suffering. Whereas, according to Islam, there is no trial by ordeal. On the contrary, husband or wife are required to provide evidence for infidelity. If the husband or wife fails to provide evidence, then they are divorced by li'an. Li'an is a procedure of divorce. When husband or wife accuses their spouse of infidelity, but there is no evidence of infidelity other than the testimony of the husband or wife. 1. The marriage is annulled with the oath of innocence of the accused, and 2. The oath of honesty by the accuser, and 3. Invocation of curse of the God on oneself by both, if he or she is lying. And the God will judge on the day of judgment. No more repercussion in the worldly life. Your testimony, witness, has no value, because you are a woman. According to Bible, witness of a man nullifies the witness of a woman. Numbers chapter 30, 10-13. And if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound her soul by a bond with an oath, and her husband heard it, and held his peace at her, and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband hath utterly made them void on the day he heard them, then whatsoever proceeded out of her lips concerning her vows, or concerning the bond of her soul, shall not stand. Her husband hath made them void, and the Lord shall forgive her. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict the soul, her husband may establish it, or her husband may make it void. And in the same way, the father of women can also nullify any testimony of their daughter. Whereas the testimony of women matters 100% according to Islam, and no one can invalidate it.
Husbands satisfy your wife, wives satisfy your husband. And it's both ways in the Bible, but in the Quran we don't have that.
Yes, Quran does not have oppression of womankind. But what does Quran have? Al-Quran chapter 9 verse 71. The believing men and believing women are allies of one another. They enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, and establish connection and purifies dues, and obey the God and his messenger. The God will have mercy upon them. Verily the God is almighty, all-wise. Al-Quran chapter 4 verse 124. And whoever does righteous good deeds, male or female, and is a believer, such will enter paradise, and will not be wronged in the least. According to Islam, men and women are equal as beings, equal in dignity and equal in the sight of Allah, but have different role, different purpose, and different responsibility. Al-Quran, chapter 30, verse 21. And of his signs is that he created for you from yourselves mates, that you may find tranquility in them, and he placed between you affection and mercy. Indeed, in that are signs for a people who give thought. Al-Quran, chapter 33, verse 35. Indeed, the Muslim men and Muslim women, the believing men and believing women, the obedient men and obedient women, the truthful men and truthful women, the patient men and patient women, the humble men and humble women, the charitable men and charitable women, the fasting men and fasting women, the men who guard their chastity, and the women who do so, and the men who remember Allah often, and the women who do so. For them Allah has prepared forgiveness and a great reward. Al-Quran, chapter 16, verse 97. Whoever works righteousness, whether male or female, while he or she is a true believer, verily to him we will give a good life, and we shall pay them certainly a reward in proportion to the best of what they used to do. According to Muhammad, the messenger of the God, the believers who show the most perfect faith are those who have the best morals, and the best of you are those who are the best to their wives. Whoever is killed over his family, then he is a martyr. I urge you to take care of the women. The Jesus of Bible never spoke against the oppression of women. The Jesus of Bible never spoke for the rights of women, never encouraged his disciple or anyone to treat women nicely, with respect. On the contrary, the Jesus of Bible insulted his own mother by not addressing her as mother, but by calling her woman. And the Jesus of Bible also insulted other women by comparing them with dogs.
Yes, you said when and how you will. It's almost as though there's no limitations for the man.
Yeah, absolutely.
No limitations? Are Muslim men allowed to oppress Muslim women? No. Al-Quran, chapter 4, verse 19. O you who believe, you are forbidden to inherit women against their will, and you should not treat them with harshness, or that you may take away part of what you have given them, unless they are guilty of manifest immorality, and live with them with honorable righteousness. But if you dislike them, it may be that you dislike a thing, and Allah makes through it a great deal of goodness. Al-Quran, chapter 3, verse 57. And as for those who believe and do righteous good deeds, He will give them their reward in full, and Allah does not like the oppressors. Therefore, Muslims are not allowed to oppress anyone, man or woman, animal or plant. Like, share, and subscribe to create awareness. We are also available on Facebook, Google+, Twitter, and Paltalk.